Yeah. Where are we, people? One day at a time. There's so much to talk about. And the world is spinning magically out of control of humans. And maybe there's some answer in that guy, but I'm just gonna give you a um, a broad picture of today's world in my brain, my fabulous little world, and maybe deal with some um, should I deal with anything that's a quote gripe? That's the enigmatic, mysterious, paradoxical question. How do we penetrate? How do we set a compass um, if we don't use sort of the stones of experience, the factors that shall I say? Well, don't dilly dally, guy. You know, I was going to talk about a cat. Uh, I met a cat. I live on a little street off of downtown. Um, and like a half a block away from downtown, I pass about four apartment houses and a smattering of small little cottages in friendly little town of San Anselmo. And there's a cat that I've come across a few times after living here about a year, who is friendly, and it comes out. It has come out in the past to say hello to me, and apparently I'm not alone in that regard. I don't have any special powers. It's a kind of cat that you can bend down and start giving it a little pat behind the ears and this and that, and the cat doesn't want to say goodbye, and you have to just say, "All right, I gotta go, cat. You gotta see you later," and walk away. Anyway, so I passed the place where the cat was, and there's flowers and pictures of the cat, and the cat's not there anymore, and all these testimonies, and I learn about Charlie. I didn't know the cat's name was Charlie, and I didn't know that Charlie was known as everybody's cat. And there's pictures of him on the wall with candles lit right now this evening. I'm pretty sure. Actually, I haven't gone past there yet this evening. But pictures of him sleeping with a 6-year-old in somebody else's car. In other words, 7 or 8 people thought of Charlie as their cat, but they knew he was everybody's cat. And Charlie got got run over. He got squished by a car in this little street that there's no need for people to be zooming down the street. And that's my thing, I guess, is the Zoom world. And I don't know. I wish people would recognize that there's another way of going about life, and there's opportunities. And I think if you were a creative person, but I know I'm not much of a good example, but I swear you don't need a car. But I guess if the boats were in, it'd be about 4 billion to 1 that you do need a car, according to everybody else. At least park it one day a week. I met some young kids in the park a few days ago, sitting at the park bench pondering things, and kids are always playing in the park. It's a great place to hang out. Creek Park in San Anselmo. And splash, or kaboom or whatever, a big noise. And I look over and the kids are playing, and they had thrown a plastic bottle over a railing and into the creek or by the creek. And I scolded them. They're about 8 or 9-year-olds, I would guess, or maybe 10-year-olds or 11-year-olds. Maybe that's closer to, probably about 10 or 11-year-olds. So I scolded them and I said, hey. And they said, oh, no. We didn't really just throw that. We just were going to go pick it up. And they ran down there and picked it up and came back and told me that they would never do such a thing. And I believe them. I thought, well, they were just playing. All right. And that's good. We got talking, had a good talk a little bit, just to urge them to respect nature. And they were properly made the right sounds. They understood what was going on in the world. And one of them piped up, or maybe I asked them about what's going on in the world. And they said that the number one problem in the world is racism. And I thought, wow. It's just not, that's just not on my radar. And yet that's what little children are being taught. And because I'm convinced the world is far more generous in that regard than what's popular pastime, which is to believe that we're surrounded by racists. Not that there isn't racism out there, but I think it's exaggerated, and I think it's part of the us against them world. So in regards to that, I don't know what to say. My Patriots Handbook, Caroline Kennedy, little compilation of Caroline, you're awesome. Quotes from Americans. It's like the favorite reference book of mine. I'm reminded that JFK on June 10th, 1963, did his address on world peace at the American University. And then the very next day, June 11th, 1963, he gave his televised address to the nation on the Civil Rights Act and the issues of race in America. So he had two huge days back to back. I didn't know exactly where I was going with this, but here's Kennedy's words on June 10th. I mean, I just want the modern progressive movement to step it up and get beyond a little petty little battle of party partisanship. Kennedy, I have chosen this time and this place to discuss a topic on which ignorance too often abounds and the truth is too rarely perceived. Yet it is the most important topic on earth, world peace. What kind of peace do I mean? What kind of peace do we seek? Not a Pax Americana enforced on the world by American weapons of war. Not the peace of the grave or the security of the slave. I'm talking about genuine peace, the kind of peace that makes life on earth worth living, the kind that enables men and nations to grow and to hope and to build a better life for their children. Not merely peace for Americans, but peace for all men and women. Not merely peace in our time, but peace for all time. In this speech at American University, JFK was proposing full disarmament of the US and our principal adversary, the Soviet Union. It was a huge speech. And it was interesting for a number of reasons, fascinating in retrospect. I'm not sure how many people in America even knew he made the speech. But the security state knew it. I'm looking for one more book here. Kennedy concluded his peace speech with a promise whose beginning fulfillment the next 5 months would confirm his own death sentence. Confident and unafraid, we labor on, not toward a strategy of annihilation, but toward a strategy of peace. Kennedy's greatest statement of his turn toward peace was his American University address. In an ironic turn of events, the Soviet Union became its principal venue. JFK's identification with the Russian people's suffering, within the speech, he had mentioned that the fact that 20 million Russians supposedly died during World War II. I say supposedly, I mean, it's a staggering amount that it's, and Americans didn't know this. Americans were living under certain myths and still are to this day. JFK's speech and identification with the Russian people's suffering penetrated their government's defenses far more effectively than any missile could have. Sorensen, who you might recall was a speechwriter, I believe, described the speech impact on the other side of the Cold War. The full text of the speech was published in the Soviet press. Still striking was the fact that it was heard as well as read throughout the USSR. After 15 years of uninterrupted jamming of Western broadcasts, the Soviets jammed only one paragraph of the speech when relayed by the Voice of America, that dealing with the baseless claims of U.S. aims. But then the next day, they didn't jam any of it. They rebroadcast it. Nikita Khrushchev, the premier of Russia at the time, was deeply moved. He told test ban negotiator Averell Harriman that Kennedy had given the greatest speech by an American president since Roosevelt, which wasn't that much time. Khrushchev responded by proposing to Kennedy that they now consider a limited test ban treaty. It was a whole new, it just opened the door when he talked to our enemy. It was so completely our enemy. However, Kennedy's speech was received less favorably in his own country. The New York Times reported his government skepticism. Quote, generally, there was not much optimism in official Washington that the president's conciliation address at American University would produce agreement on a test ban treaty or anything else. In contrast to the Soviet media, which were electrified by the speech, the US media ignored or downplayed it. For the first time, Americans had less opportunity to read and hear their president's words than did the Russian people. A turnabout was occurring in the world on different levels. Whereas nuclear disarmament had suddenly become feasible, Kennedy's position in his own government had become precarious. Kennedy was turning faster than was safe for a Cold War leader. I'll stop there. I'm going off. I'm going to go back into our modern war, our enemies. Paul Krugman. Zombies. Arguing with zombies. Nobel Prize winner, Paul Krugman. And of course, who's he referring to? The dreaded right wing. All the people who disagree with the liberal politics of our time. The roots of politicization. According to Krugman, according to any liberal, the roots of politicization are always in the enemy. The enemy is the one who's doing it. People on the left tend to have a concept of social justice along the lines formalized by philosopher John Rawls. They believe that people should advocate the society they choose if they didn't know who they would be, which role they would play. Basically, this moral position is, there but for the grace of God go I. People on the right, by contrast, view government intervention to reduce inequality and risk as immoral. Taxing the rich to help the poor as they see it is a form of theft, no matter how laudable the purpose. Is that it, Mr. Krugman, Nobel Peace Prize guy? And God, it's just hard for me to read this stuff. All this austerity is just on inequality, or nobody understands the debt. Now that we're in 30 trillion zone. This was written before that, though. This is 2015. Oh, yeah. You can see that misunderstanding at work every time someone rails against deficits with slogans like, stop stealing from our kids. It sounds right if you don't think about it. Families who run up debts make themselves poor. So isn't that true when we look at all overall national debt? No, it isn't, said the Nobel Peace Prize winner. Debt money is money we owe to ourselves. It doesn't make the economy poorer. True, debt can pose a threat to financial stability, but the situation is not improved if efforts to reduce debt end up pushing the economy into deflation and depression. Anyway, now we're up at the 30 trillion zone, and going into the brilliant New York Times. I loved this newspaper when I was a kid in high school in Cornwall, New York. 60 miles north of Manhattan, up on the Hudson River. Our high school, they would put out a stack of New York Times in front of the principal's office every day. And they were free for any kid who wanted to pick one up. And I happily did it. I thought it was cool and I enjoyed reading it, sitting in the back room of almost every class, ignoring the teachers and just reading the New York Times. It tells you where I got today. But debt. Democratic pollsters warning about the midterms. We have a problem, he says. You have a problem, do you? 30 trillion in debt. You're overriding communities regarding educational rights, community rights, 1.7 million new immigrants in the US. Do we call it illegally? They haven't been invited. I guess many of them are asylum seekers. Is that about 10 times the amount before? It's just a travesty. It's just a tragedy that the left is so blind in terms of its vision. It doesn't deal with the principles of overpopulation, having a country and having borders, and that's part of being liberty under law, like so we have a problem. This little article is talking to a Democratic pollster. So if New York Times says, so if you're advising a Democratic client running in 2022, what do you tell them? I would tell them that we have a problem. We've got a national branding problem that is probably deeper than a lot of people suspect. Our party thinks maybe some things we're saying aren't cutting through, but I think it's much deeper than that. Well, what is that branding problem in a nutshell? Well, people think we're more focused on social issues than the economy. And the economy is the number one issue right now. So if that's it, and I personally hope that I'd love it if there were just really independent people in office who believed in some practical bones of that sustainability was connected to the economy, and that the whole vision of who we are can't be. We're just dealing with survival issues in America and the planet right now. It's beyond even ecology. Really scary times. We don't need 1.7 million new new immigrants, legal or any otherwise. We are really in some serious problems here. We've been neglecting these problems for 50 years, and the identity politics are is just a sad smokescreen. Um, Democratic presidents have ignored two presidential commissions in the last 20 years that both were fundamental to advancing the general good of this country. One was the Clintons' uh, Immigration Commission, 1995, that the African American woman Barbara Jordan, um, recipient of the National Freedom Award, was the chair of. 5 years of work, bipartisan, Republicans and Democrats on the commission, urging the president, urging both parties to retract this blown up immigration policy that started in the Reagan era. And it was dismissed by Clinton, and it was forgotten that we were supposed to bring it down, according to the commission, to 500,000 new citizens a year instead of the million legal, let alone the illegal immigrants. So that was the number one, and that's really has to do with population, and that America is not on a cancerous kind of pace of simply growth for growth's sake. Really, that's how the left became a kind of a tool of corporate wealth. Somehow there's been a switching of sides of something's been switched. There's more integrity and deeper questioning, I believe, on the conservative side of the picture than on the quote liberal side. And the liberal side it's a name, and certainly not liberal and open-mindedness. The other commission was the debt commission that Obama had set up in about the third year of his term. Commission, I think it was Lee Hamilton was on charge, or maybe I'm getting the wrong name. But that charted a course of reducing the national debt to something close to neutral, like a 20 or 30 year plan. And that was immediately discarded, shoved under the rug. And Trump didn't help things. On the other hand, he kind of got stuck with his Republican buddies. I mean, both parties have sucked up to big money. That's how they generally get in office. Democratic pollsters warning, we have a problem. And you do have a problem. It's a travesty that between the $30 trillion debt and the 2 million immigrants, is this going to be the same for next year too? And of course, then McAuliffe and Youngkin in Virginia. One of the things you also said in the memo is that McAuliffe's strategy of linking Mr. Youngkin to former President Donald Trump was ineffective. What in the conversations with your groups made that clear? The respondents kind of laughed at that approach. They said, oh, these silly ads that compared Youngkin to Trump, he just doesn't seem like that guy. Not only that, I think people are just sick of the smear, sick of the demonization, and to see that there was some fundamental reality of what Trump was trying to say that was needed in the country, deeply needed. How much does Mr. Biden himself take the blame with these voters? Is his name invoked? I don't know this answer. I don't know what he's saying here. It's Biden, comma, Democrats. They all come together. Oh, I see. How much does Mr. Biden himself take the blame with these voters? Is his name invoked? It's Biden and the Democrats that people cited for why they were didn't vote for McAuliffe. I think McAuliffe was so weak in so many different levels, and I definitely feel like it just the narrative in the media is so kind of oppressive and so refusing to look at where America is really trying to find its way. Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know. Let's see. Oh, I know. One more thing. I'll wrap it up on a positive note. In Caroline Kennedy's book, I see she's put in the lyrics to America the Beautiful. So here's a couple of verses that I hadn't heard, maybe never, but maybe I heard them once and forgot them. And written in 1893 by Catherine Lee Bates upon her climbing Pikes Peak, 14,400 feet in 1893, partly by mule, partly by wagon, partly by foot, apparently. I don't know. It was mostly by mule. We know about the spacious skies and the amber waves of grain. But I'll go on in the second verse. Oh, beautiful for pilgrim feet, whose stern, impassioned stress a thoroughfare for freedom beat across the wilderness. Bunch of white guys. What did they do to the poor Native Americans? Nonetheless, the pilgrim feet, whose stern, impassioned stress a thoroughfare for freedom beat. I think of Jack Kerouac when I think of a thoroughfare for freedom beat across the wilderness. America, America, God mend thine every flaw. It's kind of nice. Confirm thy soul in self-control, thy liberty in law. Now that's some rhymes I haven't heard in a while, huh? God mend thine every flaw. Oh, beautiful, for heroes proved in liberating strife, who more than self their country loved, and mercy more than life. America, America, may God thy gold refine, till all success be nobleness and every gain divine. Kind of a spiritual motivation, I would say, there, people, huh? Maybe that's what we're all kind of wishing we had more of. And if you heard the second verse is a little more common. The last verse. Oh, beautiful for patriot dream that sees beyond the years. I mean, that's deep vision. Thine alabaster cities gleam, undimmed by human tears. Well, that's too many tears, that's for sure. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Now, I don't know. That to me works. I like that. It works a lot. And get started. I think I'm way over my time here.